Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
I'm Matt Miller.
And I'm Hannah Elliott, and this is Hot Pursuit.
We had an awesome weekend, Hannah.
My goodness. That was, I think, the most fun I've had at a car event ever.
Yeah.
It was so fun.
I would wholeheartedly agree, actually. For sure, at an event for cars and maybe even motorcycles, that was the coolest for me. I mean, the star-studded guest list that we had was just insane.
I know. Everything came together so well. And I have to say, the access I thought was incredible, both for us as media, but also for spectators.
Yep.
I mean, it made an F1 race feel a little bit difficult to navigate. Like the access, I thought at Le Mans was just really good.
Yes, we should explain for, people who aren't regular listeners what we're talking about. So Hannah and I went to Le Mans, France, to see the 24-hour race last weekend. And we had a star-studded guest list of CEOs and market movers. We had Tom Wagner, who runs Nighthead, which owns the team there, Hertz, Team Cadillac. He also owns Singer as well as Revology, obviously Hertz. We had the CEO of Hertz, Gil West, join us. We had the CEO of Ford, Jim Farley, join us. We had the CEO of Aston Martin, Adrian Hallmark. By the way, so and in terms of the race results, right? Ferrari won. Everybody was telling us the whole time they were sandbagging, and it turns out they kind of were.
They would all say, we're not allowed to tell you this, and we're not allowed to talk about the balance of power, but Ferrari sandbags, and so does Toyota.
Well, no, Toyota got sandbagged. So Toyota was given an 11-kilogram penalty, right? Because they won so much at the beginning of this decade, and Ferrari was just given a pass. And I think the impressive thing was that Porsche took second. Ferrari was first, third, and fourth. And then
this is the third year in a row Ferrari won. So 3 years in a row for Ferrari. Which is
and amazing. Their driver, Robert Kubica, right? Who is basically one-handed. Yeah.
Unbelievable story.
Truly an amazing story. But if you think about it, Cadillac actually, if you take out the Ferraris, which they were given a huge advantage, then Cadillac comes in, I think, third. They were second, because they were fifth. The number 12 car finished fifth.
I have to say, Cadillac is really developing into a fascinating story. And it was so great to be, around that team, in their hospitality, around some of their drivers, Jenson Button, of course, and some of their executives, Mark Royce, because the vibe is good. The vibe is really good. I think there is a nice little groundswell happening. And of course, that's great timing going into Formula One as a race team next year. That is a team to watch, just out of a human interest story alone.
Yeah, absolutely. I also think, I can't remember which media outlet wrote collection of the winners and losers. And they included Aston Martin as one of the winners, even though Aston Martin's hypercar team was one of the biggest losers. At the end of the race, they only beat Peugeot, which was really the biggest loser. But I also agree that Aston was a winner because they're new to this, right? Also, they were the only non-hybrid entry. And for me, watching the race, it was the sound, again, that was the most important thing. And the Cadillacs were the most amazing, deep rumble. They made everybody else sound like nothing, except for the Aston Martin Valkyrie. That thing, the V12, screams.
Screaming is the right word for it. It is unbelievable to feel that. I mean, you hear it and you feel it in your body when it goes by. It was so, so cool. And I think, for me, the takeaway is that Le Mans it's about the racing. It's about that moment that you just described, feeling when a Valkyrie goes by. there were not a ton of like influencers and just hordes of celebrities at this race, which I thought it was really nice. F1 has become all about status and really bringing, Hollywood stars and musical stars, and all of that is really great. But Le Mans doesn't have that quite yet. I think it probably will in a couple of years. I think we're headed in that direction, and that's great. That's totally fine. But it was nice to be at this old French race in this little old French town and not have a total like Instagram influencer circus.
Yep. It was pretty cool. I actually went over to the Porsche Hospitality looking for you at one point.
I was there.
Well, I didn't see you, and I stopped out on the patio because Mark Webber was giving a talk about how, WEC works and how endurance
F1
racing
driver.
strategy.
Sure.
And then he went inside and sat down next to, I thought, his twin brother. I didn't know Mark Webber had a twin brother, and I realized it was Eric Bana.
Yeah, what's really funny is I was sitting behind them. I actually went upstairs in hospitality to sort of hide out. This was after we'd wrapped taping and everything. And I was just like, I honestly just want to watch the race. I don't want to have to talk to anyone. I want to sit and watch the TV and watch the race. So I went upstairs in Porsche Hospitality. This is after the race had started. There was no one there because everyone moved closer to the track. And I just sat down behind these two dudes. And it was like the three of us and a couple other folks in the room. That was it for an hour. And then eventually some other people came into the room, some Porsche executives and puffers. And they get the guy to turn around, and I realized it's Mark and Eric.
Yeah.
And I had no idea. And they were just chilling. It was actually really cool.
Yeah, it was very, very cool. I watched most of the race upstairs in the Cadillac Hospitality, and just because there was a collection of bros there that knew so much about racing. Dario Franchitti was sitting up there. Raj Nair, formerly of Ford, was up there, now the CEO of Singer. Brian Burke was up there. He's an executive vice president at Multimatic. There were just a ton of people. Gil West was there. So every time I had a question, and I had so many, I would just lean over and be like, yo, Dario, what's the pitting strategy? Nice. And then he would explain to the room. Yeah, it was awesome.
That is so cool. I love it. I also think we should give a shout out to David Clark, who really made a lot of this happen. David is kind of a king. I feel like he's kind of a kingmaker in this world. And we saw him in Cadillac. We kind of saw him everywhere.
Yep.
That's another one that, like, when you're listing off these names, these are people who've been in the business forever. And they know everyone. There's nobody they can't call to get something done, or, just to talk to or whatever, to get insight from. It was really cool to be a part of that. And I definitely hope we can do it again next year.
Speaking of kings, we have one on this program today.
Yes, we do.
Truly a king. If his kingdom is not having its best year in 2025, we're going to talk to Toto Wolff, who is the CEO and co-owner of Mercedes, their Formula One team, Mercedes AMG Petronas. He's the team principal. He's a billionaire from Austria. And I mean, speaking of highly connected, this guy is married to Susie Wolff. So she started the Formula Academy.
Yeah. They're talk about a power couple. Also, Toto has transcended motorsport to become famous in culture, I think, in general. And I know that's true because my gay best friend, who doesn't care for motorsport at all, but loves music, loves Toto. I've got some girly friends who are not involved in cars at all. They all know all about Toto and are big fans. So he has transcended cars, and he is now on another level. So we're excited to have him.
Let's talk about race weekend, because you guys had a good one. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, that was a good one. We finished first and second, won the race with George Russell, and excitingly, with 18-year-old Kimi Antonelli, we finished third. So, double podium.
And how did you get there? Because it's been a long slog, right?
Well, it hasn't been such a slog. I think you're being a bit harsh with us here. Because we won a bunch of races last year. We've been dominant in Las Vegas, but we haven't competed for a championship since a while. And in that respect, this season we had many podiums but no victories. And yesterday it was on complete merit. We've been strong throughout the race on all tires. There was not, the lack of a safety car. So it was us really, being the benchmark there.
Kimi is, I think, the third youngest driver ever to take a race podium, which is huge. Can you tell us just a little bit about what you see in him as a driver, and what you see as he develops, what you can expect for the future?
So Kimi's been in our junior program since he was 11. And you can today recognize talent, I would say from the age of 10, when the kids start to compete in the international go-karting series. And we're having a good group of scouts in our Mercedes-Benz junior program. And that's important. In a way, it works like the soccer academies or tennis academies that identify talent very early on. And for a young driver, they start winning races, and the really best ones win championships, and the great ones do that every year. And that's why we saw that Kimi was different from the age of 11 or 12. And then he's continued.
What did you see? What do you see in an 11-year-old?
Winning championships.
Already.
Already. In karting, you have these age groups, 8 to 10, 10 to 12, 12 to 14. And if a kid starts at the age of 8 and is already competitive against 2-year elder children, that's already a good indication. And if that child wins a championship a year younger than everybody else, that's another good indication. And he has been winning throughout these categories, and that's very exceptional.
I always think about this kind of feeder program that you have, and I think about, I've lived in Germany for a long time, so I'm familiar with the soccer feeder program that they have. How many women or how many girls are in this? Because if we learned anything from Le Mans this weekend, is that you don't need to have this kind of dominant alpha male strength to win a race. Like Kubica has an injured arm and still took the victory over the factory team. So clearly women could compete at the top level.
Yeah, Robert is an exceptional driver, great talent. He had a signed Ferrari contract before he had the rally accident, so he would have been a world champion. I have no doubt about that. And also the resilience that he's shown, because he's driving with one hand. Yeah. But in terms of young female, it's just a number game. When you look at go-karting 10 years ago, of 100 kids, there would have been 2 girls. Now there is 15 or 20. And that's why we eventually gonna have young females competing, being able to compete in Formula One. So we have a young lady in our program. Her name is Luna Fluxa, who is winning races, who is winning championships. She's gonna step into cars in 1 year. And she has the talent and the ambition and the character to be successful. And then obviously the program that my wife manages, the Formula One Academy, which is an all-female series, has been inspiring for young girls suddenly seeing being a racing driver as a career. Because in the past there were no role models. It was Susie who was in the last one in Formula One, and now suddenly there's a Netflix series around Formula One Academy that has just dropped, and more girls are starting to have an interest.
Last week I was with Frank Walliser with Bentley. Frank, the former head of Porsche Motorsport, and we were talking about how long it takes to develop young drivers. I'm curious, for Antonelli, for instance, how many years do you think he would need to really get him to the top of his game and maybe be at the top of the podium? Is that a 3-year game? Is that a 5-year game? Or is it shorter than that?
So that has changed in the last few years because it is so difficult to manage the tires. It's not only about speed, how fast can you go on a single lap or in a race, but nurturing the tires to drive as fast as you can, in the same time not sliding them and not making them overheat, because you lose tons of lap times. And that is the limitation for young drivers coming up. A good example is Piastri, who is leading the championship. It took him a year and a half actually to kind of catch up to Lando Norris. And it's been the first year that he has an edge on him. And that is, I think, just the tire management. And with Kimi, he doesn't know all of the circuits. It was the first time in Montreal, so you start with a massive disadvantage. But the car was good, and he was able to, be fast. But coming back to your question, yes, you probably need to look at the 3-year program and say that's the time it needs for a young driver to, to challenge your more experienced teammates that are also super fast. I mean, George today is among the best drivers in Formula One. And that's something you need to give them time. You need to accept that there's going to be more difficult weekends, underperformance, but that's just part of how it goes now.
So do you have a take on whether or not a team should have 2 drivers for the whole season and they stay there? Because a lot of people have been talking about this since Jack Doohan was removed. Or do you think that a team should be able to revolve, like occasionally you could use Valkyrie and take...
I think when you take the right decision in terms of talent, you must be very conscious of who you're putting in the car. And if that young driver shows a lot of promise, you also need to give them time to develop. And that's what we are doing with Kimi. There were lots of voices that said, how can you put an 18-year-old in a car, especially in a Mercedes? It's not like you're competing in a smaller team and you're under the radar, but literally you're being catapulted in a seat where people expect you to be on the podium or win races. So that's been our philosophy. We wouldn't give anyone a seat if we didn't think that can be a champion of the future.
What does Valtteri do for you guys? Because he put out a pretty hilarious video on social where he's drinking a lot of espresso and hanging out, right? But he's obviously an incredibly talented pilot, so I guess he can add a ton of value, right?
Valtteri is just an awesome guy. He's a super talented driver, and he's kind of found his, he's being authentic now. I met Valtteri in 2008. He was a young driver without any financial backing, and he was dominating junior series. I remember seeing his first race in a really competitive feeder series called Formula Renault. There was 44 starters. He was on pole. And at the end of the race, he was leading by a margin of 10 seconds. So outstanding driver. Then came into Formula One and unfortunately ended up with the most successful driver of all times, Lewis Hamilton, as a teammate in his peak. And Valtteri was a vice world champion many times. He's won many races. He's been dominant some of the circuits. And also against his teammates when he went to Sauber, he just basically crushed them all. But then he ended up without a seat, and for us a huge opportunity to take him back as a reserve. I know that if one of our drivers would have a fish poisoning, we would have the best guy in the car to actually perform. So that's positive. And on a different note, he has kind of found his brand. He's an extremely cool guy. He always was, but he's a Finn. He was introverted, and he's in a way he broke free of the Mercedes environment. And he has this mustache and the hair, and how do you call that? The mullet. The mullet. Yeah. And he's able
That's
to.
That's business in the front, party in the back.
Exactly.
In German, it's called a Fokuhila.
Vorne kurz hinten lang, which is like in the front you're efficient, and in the rear you're fashionable, stylish. And Valtteri is an individual that can take a Mickey out of himself, which is so important. You need to be able to laugh about himself. And Valtteri has the ambition and the talent to come back into Formula One. And if that doesn't fly, he's going to make a career in Le Mans that you like, or in Indy cars or whatever, because he's so good. But on top of that, he's a laugh. I mean, I saw that video, and it's really great content.
That really makes me think about this conversation we had with Jenson Button this past weekend at Le Mans. And Jenson made the comment that Formula One drivers are very selfish. They're the most selfish drivers in any series. We were talking about, of course, NASCAR and endurance racing. And I'm wondering if you agree with that. And how do you manage these personalities, the egos? We'll be honest that you have to have a pretty good opinion of yourself to put yourself on the line like that. How do you manage that as team principal?
So there's two things. You cannot expect from a Formula One driver to be a lion in the car and a puppy outside. These guys are traumatized little 6-year-olds because they've been put in a go-kart as basically toddlers. That's scary. You know, you're being told, drive fast. These carts go 100 kilometers an hour. It's raining. You have accidents and you need to rely on yourself. You find out that you are alone in this go-kart and you just need to survive. And only the best do. There's many kids that eventually drop out because of fear, pressure, or running or lack of talent. So if you make it in Formula One, you know that you can only rely on yourself. You need to be selfish. You need to beat your teammate. So that is a key ingredient. But, and here's the caveat, I believe that the best ones also have social intelligence, emotional intelligence. They know how to maneuver a paddock. They are career focused and driven, but they are not selfish because they understand that in order to be successful in Formula One, you need to have the good people around you, whether it's in the team or whether it's in your management, and you need to look at it from a long-term perspective. The short-term optimization will not make you the most successful driver. And we've seen it in the past, that people missed out on great careers because they were acting arrogantly or selfish, optimizing every single opportunity rather than being a team player. Lewis Hamilton is a fantastic team player and he's been the most successful of all time. Michael Schumacher was able to assemble a team around him and being hugely successful. So you see that with the best. So talent, ambition, but also consciousness that it doesn't all revolve around yourself. There is other people that are part of your success. And how I've been managing this from the first day that I've been in Formula One is that I make no difference between the two drivers and the rest of the company. And I've been telling them that there's 2,500 superstars in this team, whether they work in the machine shop, in the cleaning, in aerodynamics, or driving the car. I'm not going to treat you any different than any of the other people. If you are selfish and you put our joint success at risk, or you damage our brand, then I'm going to be ruthless about it. You have no part in this team. And that philosophy worked because our drivers have understood. They respect that. They care that everybody is part of the success, and they realize that when they crash into each other, for example, people can't pay their mortgages because they don't earn their bonus.
I get it. I get that, and I love the egalitarian take. But there's obviously an importance of having someone as good as, say, Lewis Hamilton to help lead the team. You do what you do, but he also must have contributed a lot in that sense. Do you miss Lewis? I mean, I'm sure personally you can still hang out with him, but do you miss him in that sense as such an experienced leader, as such a champion?
You always have to miss a person like Lewis Hamilton. And as you say, we're still close friends. We have given our word to each other that we will stay close friends. We're fighting hard on track with the gloves off of our because we need to fight for our respective teams. And that's the kind of rule we have. But off track, we spend some time with each other. We travel with each other, and I don't want to miss the friend that I've gotten for so many years. The longest ever driver-team relationship in Formula One, 12 years. You rarely see that in any other sport. And when it comes to developing the car, obviously he has a lot of experience. He's seen it all, and to replace someone like Lewis Hamilton is always going to be difficult.
With Lewis, obviously, he probably hasn't been finishing as high up this year as he wanted. But also, I've read plenty of his comments in the press that he is unconcerned. This is a long process. This is a new team, a new car. And of course, anyone would be foolish to count out a champion like Lewis Hamilton ever. I'm just wondering how you see that now from your side of the track, so to speak, as he is learning a new car and a new team and taking some time to do it.
I fully agree with that. you don't unlearn driving that quickly. In 2021, he was great. Then the regulation changed and it got a little bit more difficult, but he was still performing on a very high level. And just by changing teams, suddenly you don't lose your skills. I think that everybody needs to have a period of adaptation. Different car, different DNA of how that vehicle drives, new engineering team that you need to start to work together. Then be involved in the continuous development in the car so it suits your driving style. It's an all-Italian team. He's a British guy, parachuted in there, and that takes time. Also, we have seen a little bit of a pattern that Lewis, at the beginning of the season, he needs to come into to find the mojo, and the second half of the season have been always very strong. So don't ever write Lewis Hamilton off.
Can I just point out that Marc Marquez did not need any time for that? Do you watch?
It all goes back to MotoGP.
What are the other leagues or sports that you're in? I know you're super busy with Formula One, so you probably can't. But MotoGP, Marc Marquez has been so insanely dominant, and he is old and broken and switched not only to a different team, but he's working for the Italians who really don't like him.
Yeah, I think there is these exceptional athletes that clearly outstanding in their category, and he has shown that switching manufacturers hasn't affected him. On the contrary, he's great on the Ducati as well. I don't know, how many world championships did Marc Marquez win?
He's got 8 now.
So it's like Lewis, right?
Yeah, true.
And these are the greats, and some adapt easier, some take a little bit of time. But Lewis Hamilton is one of the greatest GOATs of all time.
Yeah, of course. He's up there on that level with a Rossi as well.
Speaking of Lewis, obviously he was the producer in this F1 film. Toto, how involved were you in the filming, the production? The film's coming out very soon. I'm actually going to see it tonight in a press screening.
Is there a Toto in this movie?
Yeah, Javier Bardem actually. I'm really
wow.
Really proud. Yeah. And he's taken a lot of interest in the role also, and say, how does it work? He spent some time with me at the race. I had him in the garage, listening to the intercom. Exceptional guy, also to be so keen and understanding, trying to understand. And we've been involved from early on. Obviously, Lewis was the main one guiding the team in the narrative, in the storyline, what's realistic, what's not. I can only take a mini credit in it. I'm an executive producer, and I was told when that's on the screen, it's pretty good.
Yes.
But other than that, we helped to build the cars. So we built F2 cars that are the cars that are racing in there. We pointed Brad at the right racing driver schools to learn it, and obviously there were meetings where we were asked of our opinion: is that realistic or not? Is that what you would do? And so we had a contribution in that. And I've seen the movie in premiere for the team principals and drivers in Monte Carlo, and I don't see a mistake. There's nothing that I would not see as being completely unrealistic. I mean, you have the driver, Sonny, who is older than what you would think, but not much more. All of the storyline is realistic, and even for us, racing insiders, we couldn't find anything wrong.
We actually asked Jensen Button over the weekend, like, what is the difference when you're 45 as opposed to 25? I mean, he still has incredible reflexes, right? And what makes younger drivers better? Because they do always have a few tenths on the guys, even the champions who are 20 years older.
I think that the true champions can compensate some of the sharpness that you lose. I mean, cognitively, all of us becoming elder, you lose some of that. I think what your reactions, what your eyes see, motoric capability, that's something that's getting slower, but you can compensate that by the right amount of training. So that's one thing. The other is that the courage. Young drivers are sometimes not thinking too much about the risks of the sport. And the older you get, you may realize that a little bit more. But again, the outstanding ones are capable of compensating that in different training, for example. So Alonso's going to be 44 this year, and he's still an exceptional driver.
Yeah,
that's incredible.
We were talking to Zach Brown about him. He could help them.
I mean,
Triple Crown.
Zach Brown is in his early 50s, and he still thinks of himself as being a great driver.
He may need to lose a few pounds.
Yeah, I need to be. Zach is a friend of mine, so I need to be careful. But as you have said, you can get him in. It's just a matter of how quickly you can get him out again. But
wow,
yeah, that's really nasty. But he's a good friend. He's gonna take that with a pinch of salt. Yeah.
Matt did make the point, back to the being an elder driver. You do have more to lose potentially once you get married, you have children.
True.
You start to have more at stake.
You recognize your mortality.
I can just tell you from my personal career, I think I was never afraid of the mortality thing. Nobody will survive anyway. And if you can say that you're doing what you want, you love what you do, you have a great family, then this point is eventually going to come. So there's not a single time in a car that I thought about mortality. But you start, you kind of start looking at things that you haven't in the past. With me particularly, in rallying, suddenly I saw trees that I have never seen before, that I would have not looked at before. Or in the race car, when it's raining and there's aquaplaning, you think about lifting. As a 25-year-old, I would have never thought about lifting over aquaplaning. It is what it is, So that changes. But it's not being scared. It's just that
I hear you.
Realize.
I hear you. I don't know if you saw this news, but Kering is naming Luca De Meo from Renault its next chief executive officer. And you are very fashionable, very stylish in an elegant way. What do you think about this potential to, if you're a great leader in automotive or in racing, that you could do something also in luxury or fashion? This kind of shift. Have you thought about that?
So first of all, Luca is a star for me. And I've texted with him this morning and congratulated him and said it's a shame, we've worked in Formula One together. Alpine is going to have Mercedes engine next year, but he's not around, and he was fundamental in making that happen. So I really, really rate him as a manager. I think when you have an understanding for an organization, and he's turned Renault around, massively.
Yes.
He was great at Seat. He was exceptional at Volkswagen before. If you have an understanding for an organization, if you are able to motivate people, if you have empathy, but at the same time you create the right amount of pressure, you can succeed in any industry, in my opinion. And I think for Kering it's a coup to have someone like Luca Di Meo as a CEO.
It's just cool that from engineering to fashion, there's a huge difference, right? One of them is mathematical, methodical, and the other one is just an innate sense that you have. But
as a car guy, you also have you need to have a sense of aesthetics.
Yeah.
Cars need to look good. People, a car is always, people say, I'm buying a car because it's, it doesn't burn a lot of fuel, or it's looks good, has a lot of power. But all these things are just disguising the real reason we are buying a car. Buying a car is an emotional act. It's how I want to be perceived, not how I am, but how I want to be perceived. And a proper car guy, and I see that with Ola Kalenius, who runs Mercedes, they understand that very well. What is it the customer wants to have? What's the aesthetics of the car of the future? It's not about what you like today. It's about what this is going to be in 3 years. And I remember having been shown around the next generation of Mercedes a few years ago by Ola Kalenius and Gordon Wagner, who is the chief designer of Mercedes. And he said, so he's shown Lewis and I around. He said, how do you like the cars that are coming in 3 years? And we said, well, we don't like them. He said, I'm glad that you say that, because if you would like the cars in 3 years, I know we would have done it wrong, because you will like them in 3 years, but not now. So sense of aesthetics, Luca's going to do just fine. He's been part of designing great cars. He's going to be part of designing great Gucci clothes.
Toto,
finding the right people that are going to design the good Gucci clothes.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so what for you is the most beautiful car ever made?
Whoa, I would say spontaneously the 300 SL. Gullwing.
I mean, you're not wrong, but it's just a bummer that since you work for Mercedes, it's. I was hoping.
It is a beautiful car.
But it is the car. I mean, you could also say, 250 GTO Ferrari is a spectacular car, but looking at it with a non-Mercedes head, I think the most amazing car is also the one that was the most expensive car ever sold, is the Ullenhaut Coupé, the pre-300 SL. You look at that car and it's just the beauty in itself with the technology that was unseen in those early years. And then the 300 SL was the development, the road car, which then became a race car. But these are just the best cars in the world.
I mean, Hannah's written about that car extensively.
I was there when it sold.
You were there when it was sold? Congratulations. I think this was an event that as a car person, you can be proud that you've been part of it. But also, I'm driving the 300 SLs and it's a 1956 car. And that thing drives 250 kilometers an hour. It brakes like a modern car. Even with the old tires, you can swoosh around the corner and you can see how far advanced Mercedes was in terms of developing high-performance cars back in the day. And again, Ullenhaut Coupé is amazing.
I would also like to have a 300 SL. How much time do you have to hang out with cars, to enjoy, the aesthetics or the smell, the vibrations, like the good old stuff, since you're so busy at work with the new stuff?
Not enough, unfortunately, but I'm so lucky. I have Mercedes company cars and I get driven around with Mercedeses to and from the races. That's really great, and I appreciate that. I was given a company car in the UK, a new S-Class S63, and I wrote an email to the head of Mercedes-Benz UK, and I said, I'm so thankful and grateful that you're giving me a company car like the S63, because seeing it, stepping into the car, driving it or being driven is just pure joy. And in the same way, driving some of the vintage cars around, it's I need to pinch myself sometimes being able to have these Mercedes cars.
I want to ask a little bit about motorsport in general. Matt and I are all hyped up on Le Mans because we were just there. Would Mercedes ever run a factory team at Le Mans? Would you join? And obviously, there's so much branding potential for you. Where do you see motorsport growing?
We were told it's a bargain, Toto. 30-40 million for the season. What a bargain!
It's a bargain, yeah. Define bargain. No, but how I'm looking at it. Le Mans, I'm a racer. Le Mans 24 hours is one of the greatest races in the world. Formula One, for me, obviously, with my bias, is the best there is. It's the best drivers, quickest cars, the greatest tracks. And then there is a long time nothing. But if I would say what's next, Le Mans 24 hours, Indy 500, and that is really one for insiders, and the Nordschleife, the Nürburgring 24 hours. That for me is, the top of the top. And when I'm not having a Formula One weekend, I can watch a Le Mans race pretty much through the night. I'm following the live feed and know some of the drivers, so I have a personal interest. And as Mercedes, it's something that we did in the past. We weren't particularly, that wasn't our happiest place. We had a very bad accident in the 50s when we exited, and then some of our prototypes have been flying, taking off in the 90s and early 2000s, I think it was, in the 1990s. But what it is for me today is we are concentrating on, the main platform, and that is Formula One. It's what we want to do, right? This captures 99% of the audiences. And everything else is, comes second. Now, we have entered with Mercedes with a GT3 car That's something which we are looking at. That is our customer program.
Speaking of aesthetics, I think it was probably the best one in the GT3s.
Yeah, it looks really great.
Yes.
And then there is the little, caveat. Ola Kalenius and I, the CEO of Mercedes, we are racing people, and we don't like BOPs. We don't like balance of performance. We don't like somebody assessing your power, your energy consumption, your weight, your driver skill, and then. I'm being harsh now.
But that won't survive. I think you're right. I don't think that's going to survive. After this, it's just not fair. Yeah,
you spend so much time and money and effort in developing the quickest car, and then you're being put 10 kilograms of ballast into this car. And I don't want to be, I just want to, build the quickest car. And Formula One has shown how it goes. Give us a cost cap. Do Le Mans, give everybody a cost cap. You cannot spend more than X, whatever you said, 30, 40 million. And within these 30, 40 million, that is what, then you can do what you want. I mean, still there's regulations, but nobody needs to bluff in preseason racing or in qualifyings, but it's war. It's, gloves off, pure racing. If that was to happen, Le Mans absolutely would be something that we would be looking at. But at the moment, BOP, having some officials judge whether you're quick or too quick, putting 10 kilograms in your car, taking it out from someone else the next day, not for us at the moment.
Hey, man, it's been really great spending some time with you. Yes. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. And, it's good to have a chat with the two of you so enthusiastic about cars, having been in Le Mans. There wouldn't be many Americans, I guess, that you would have found in Le Mans this weekend. So great that you have been there.
More with Cadillac, more, right?
True, yeah.
So.
Yeah, true. I mean, we love it. And I know you won't remember, but we last spoke in Las Vegas at the F1 race in Vegas. And I always very much appreciate you taking the time for Bloomberg. So thank you very much.
It was a pleasure for me.
All right, well, that's all we have for this week. We'll be back same time, same place next week. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Matt Miller.
I'm Hannah Elliott, and this is Bloomberg.